So basically, I wanted to do one more video on the whole divestor situation that I was talking about recently. I honestly feel like it is much easier nowadays than it used to be when it came to divestment, because a lot of the time it seemed like divestment was tied in very closely with content creators and platforms that had to do with colorism, had to do with rejection, had to do with anger at black men. These were things I never had in common. And you could say slight anger, only in the sense of harassment, but not even in the same sense of what a lot of people mean when they say anger. You know, when I first started my channel, black men were a thought in my head. But the main reason I made my channel had nothing to do with divestment. It had to do with Chrissy, of which I've said before. But it did have to do with some of the things I had to say on, basically being harassed by black men. And that part did have to do with me basically, I guess you could say, some kind of anger, but not even in the same sense that other people say. Like, most of the time, when I would hear people that would have anger towards black men as a divester, they, one, are going off calling black men all sorts of names sometimes, like, I guess for shock factor, maybe, like the N word, calling them apes and all that stuff. Fine, I don't care if they do that too on other channels. But more than that is when they would complain about what kind of a partner a black man is, or what kind of father he is, what kind of husband he is, boyfriend he is, whatever, as far as a lover. Basically, personally, to me, I never related to that. I never hypothesized, thought about, or cared what kind of lover a black man is to anyone. I'd never liked thinking of his capacity to basically um, have any sexual presence or uh, appeal, basically, because I don't like to think of black men that way. My issue was more so when black men would follow me to the bathroom, of a secluded bathroom at night. Now that would be a problem, obviously, and that was actually my first video I made a video on, because at this time I was specifically in a situation where it was very common for me to be harassed by black men. And a lot of the time, the message I got back from pretty much most people involved was that, well, you're supposed to be receptive to him. And for me personally, I was not receptive to black men in general, let alone many different types of scary black men. Heck no. You know, Now, it could be scary black men, it could be business black men, it could be billionaire black men, I don't know, whatever else fantastical black man, okay? It would never matter for me. I just was never interested in them. And, you know, sometimes it was almost like black women, from my perspective, was black women were there to please black men, you know? It's how black men try to treat black women, it seems like. And sometimes people will perceive black women that way, like people outside of the race and so forth. So, that was more my issue. One was the assumption, the racist assumption at that. I mean, people say it's wrong to assume if someone's straight because people can be gay, but for some reason they think it's okay to assume what race you're supposed to be attracted to. That was more frustrating to me especially in a society where most of the men, most of the opposite sex, is not black. So why should I be expected to prefer what is only 10% of the population? So that was one part of it. Then also another part of this was the whole part of basically saying that, they were rejected by black men, that, um, they cry over colorism, things of that nature, were things I never related to. My personal experience was quite the opposite. So for me, that's what I was exposed to and basically shown what divestment was, back in the old day, back in, 2019, basically. And that's why for me, I did not specifically associate with them. But like I said, I would get into a lot of fights with the golden sphere for this reason. A lot of them would. I remember one content creator compared me to Emmett Till because I wasn't attracted to black men and I didn't want them to hit on me. It was just so weird. It's like, oh my God, so you really are going to compare me to somebody who killed a black boy to, me just not being attracted to black men. Yeah, it was that extreme back then for me. So, yeah, for me, I just wanted to say, this whole thing with encountering some of these people who recently had an issue with me, they reminded me a lot of the old school people from long ago that, like, at the beginning in 2019, I could not associate with divestors specifically because they would cry about colorism. They would be dark skinned black women who were focused on color and would tell other people that if you're not dark skinned, you don't have any business trying to divest. Literally had this argument with people on Twitter in 2020. That was a common thing that I heard from people was they were so focused on the color, they didn't care that there were other women that were divested because they didn't like those women. And usually I found myself to be one of those women that they seemed to not favor in that way, you know. So it has been, I think, why the beginning of my channel, I was really actually in a position where I never knew where I quite fit, but I did know, like, that's why I would watch videos from crystal swirls, but at the same time, like, everybody knows for me, like, the first live stream I got on was maonsphere based. Had Jessica X on it with Game Changer. They both were on it and they were talking to me with what's his name? Red Supreme. And they didn't fight me in that live stream back then because for me, it was just like I hadn't actually specifically told them really my racial preference at the time because one, actually I did tell Red Supreme my racial preference, but I think that was back in 2019 and I don't know if he recognized. I think he did recognize. I'm not really sure. But that whole situation was different anyway. Everyone kind of knows how I am. But generally, they didn't really openly know how I specifically, um, I guess, have my preferences. But yeah, for a bit of time, I did, I guess you could say, um, would talk to certain content creators, I guess, that were manosphere based, but I never really stayed consistent over there because my thing was I'm not attracted to dark skinned black men. So most times I don't want to talk or associate with them. If I want to get a point through, like in that situation, it was mainly bad mouthing Rashida Strober and talking about a situation that is hard for me to talk about. I've talked about a few times on my channel, but specifically receiving like a situation of colorism where a dark-skinned black woman used her power of having dark skin privilege over me, basically. Um, so, I mean, like, that's, like, if I want to get that message through, I will tell anyone about those types of things. But generally, for me, I am not well associated with the black man side of YouTube because, well, I'm not attracted to them. Now, the thing is, like I said, I can talk about dating and stuff and have a 3 hour conversation about this. And if I'm not talking about the race I date, usually people don't have an issue because generally when I talk about those type of issues, I align very closely, more so I guess with the manosphere, in the sense where I'm not specifically like those type that are like feminine, hypergamous, housewife type. I'm more of the type that's like a, what do you call it, like maybe Barb the Builder type, partnership type of individual. Kind of type. Like, I'm not the type that's hypergamous, basically. So when I'm over on the manosphere side, I can specifically talk over there, and usually I don't get into too many fights, especially when I'm on the white manosphere side of YouTube, because they generally don't. It's if it's not about race, and we're just talking about issues, they kind of just like, well, these are the issues, and I talk about how I view them, right? Now, this was another part of what I wanted to talk about. I've had people who would try and say that for me, I act a lot more similar to content creators who align with the manosphere sometimes, but somehow I'm divested and a swirler. How can that happen? Uh, I've had that happen where both uh, sides will say this. Like, manosphere will be like sometimes, why are you a swirler, as they call it over there sometimes, and you align with the manosphere? And then some people will be like, how can you be divested but you agree with the manosphere? For me, it's just like, when I say divested, personally, to me, it just means I'm attracted to white men and Hispanic men. That's mainly who I'm attracted to. That's just what it is. I've never had a sexual thought about a dark skinned black man. I mean, I talk to I talk to sometimes white men at my job about black men, you know, because that's their fantasy. But other than that, I mean, like, I don't personally have them for me. But I mean, like, there's sometimes some gay guys who are obsessed with black men and all that stuff. Other than that, I mean, like, I've never had a sexual thought about a black man for my own personal purposes. So for me, it's just like, I think that generally for me, it's kind of like a lot of people don't really understand people like me because they don't get that you don't have to be a reject. You don't have to be crying about colorism, and you don't have to be complaining about black men and how they are going to be a good husband or a good father or whatever else the fuck you want them to do if you are not looking for them to do anything. For me, I'm just not looking for black men to do anything. So, I mean, like, that's not my interest, you know? And a lot of the time I find that, because of this, some people have an issue with me because I don't specifically have that aspect to me where I am specifically looking to black men to help me with anything, because I'm not interested in black men with anything. All I wish for black men to do is leave me alone. That's it. And, a big complaint for me before the pandemic was harassment. When I lived in the city, it was harassment. Black men harassing me. I hate when black men harass me because they never give up, because nobody wants them, so they try harder, of course. So for me, that's just mainly my thing. My focus really is, you know, I guess you could say more on the lines of safety. And this is why maybe for me, I align more with channels that focus more on safety with black men, but do not really care about the kind of husbands, fathers, boyfriends that they are. because they're not looking for them romantically, you know. So, I want to say, sometimes I think many channels in the divested sector, you'll find they still do have an issue with channels like, for example, like Kevin Samuels. I specifically never did have a big issue with like channels like Kevin Samuels. I'm not the one who supported Kevin Samuels either, though. But I'm the type, because I never even subscribed to his channel. I think he was angry at me, actually. Um, but I personally never had any issue with him. I never was for him. I never was against him. I never had a conversation with him in time period. I, I talked to other people, and had conversations and no problems before, but particularly him, no, And for me, it was just always like, black male channels don't bother me when they talk about relationships, especially when they talk about what they want or what they don't want, because I don't want them. You know what I mean? It's the least likely to bother me in any regard or hit a nerve in any regard because I don't want them. So that's why I never understood why, as a divested woman, should I have an issue with Kevin Samuels. Never made any sense with me. To me, I mean, I never really cared about channels like that who would criticize women and say what they want. If the person who's saying what they want isn't what I want, why do we care? I really don't. And this is not just specifically black men, because I mean, like, I guess this is why I go into red pill channels, red pill side of YouTube, and particularly many of them can be white, and some of them I see and some of them I don't see, but many of them, I'm not attracted to them and I don't want them in any regard, even if I didn't know their views. But a major thing is with red pill is that to me, I'm like, well, you like a gold digger. You want someone who will use you, basically, because you think that women all want money, and and that's the only way that they'll ever want you. I'm just not that type of person. I'm not going to use you for your money. I don't want you like that. This just isn't my interest, really. I don't like men in that regard. For that, I mean, I've gone through why I don't look to men for protection, for provision, and things of that nature because I don't personally even see them in that lane. They have to appeal to me more on an emotional and physical level where, like, can we grow together? Can we become one? Do we have a lot in common? If we have those things and those themes, then I feel like, there's more of an appeal and there's an impetus to have a desire to start something up. Money isn't going to make me want to do that. Money is just going to make me think I need to get a career that gets me that money. And I have that. So that's not really ever a temptation for me. And protection, well, that just means you need a gun. So, I mean, I'm just being honest, safety and protection of yourself, just get a gun. Anyone can pull the trigger, So to me, that's why for me, it's like when they say these type of things, it's like, that's not what I want. I don't understand why I should have a fit over what someone says they want. That's not me. When what they are and what they need is something I don't want to give them, can't give them, and don't want to have them as a partner, particularly because of the man that they've become. So, I mean, like, to me, if you really genuinely don't want those type of men who have those channels that you say you don't like, then their channels shouldn't really bother you because you don't want them either, you know. So I guess that's why for me, there's not really any black manosphere channel that really bothers me. Even the ones obsessed with black women who are divested. In their case, sometimes I feel like those people are more so just wanting black women so badly. and then they feel hurt that black women don't want them, kind of situation. But then again, there's other situations like black women who do that too. I see it both ways. And mammies annoy me more because it says more about me because they have my image and they're black women. So that bothers me actually more than actually black men, because it's like mammies are mad at black men because they don't want them because of passport bros or whatever else is bothering them today. To me, are just silly, because it's like you end up looking like a fool, sweetie, because you think that you have the right to control a man and who he goes with and where he goes to find his woman because of the color of his skin. You don't have that much power, sweetie, you know. So that's just how I feel about that whole situation. I just feel like a lot of the time with these different situations, a lot of people try and act like why I should have an issue or I should have some kind of personal interest in black men enough to care about what kind of husbands they are, or what kind of fathers they are, or what kind of woman they want. These things are not going to be interests of mine because, like I said in the first place, I've never wanted a black man. And the main interest and the main problem for me was the fact that black men harass me and they have interest in me. So them not having an interest would be a good step in the right direction. Like I said, I don't want other incidences of black men following me to the bathroom, okay? And a secluded bathroom at night. Like, I don't want to end up dead. And that's a true story, by the way. I literally had this video out back 4 years ago, but I got a lot of harassment for it back in the day. Anyway, so that's basically all I have to say here. It's just, I'm not going to be the type that just wars against the black manosphere. There's some things that I say specifically, like if people try and say black men are most desired men, personally, I'll explain to you why I don't want them, why I don't care who they're with, and so forth, because I'm not interested in them, personally. I'll tell you my own personal interest if you ask, but I don't really care what they're doing over there as far as like what they're interested in and so forth. I support them in them not being attracted to black women. I mean, like, where do you think black men are going to go if they don't go with black women? And you have to understand, I'm a divested black woman who doesn't want to be with black men. So if the idea is I don't want them to be with black women like me or to look to me, I'm going to encourage them to be with women of other races. So, I'm not scared of the black man being with other races. I encourage it, And I think that's why with my content, sometimes people get so confused with me because they'll be like, aren't you supposed to rage against the black manosphere? It's not going to happen for me, but you're not going to find me also. You're also not going to find me ever say that I'm attracted to dark-skinned black men, because that never happens either. So that's all I have to say in this video. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, comment down below, and have a great day. Bye, guys.